Welcome back, dragon enthusiasts and schemers alike. Season 2 of House of the Dragon roars on with Episode 3, delivering more twists than a dragon's tail in a storm. In this latest installment, alliances are tested, secrets smolder, and the fire of ambition burns brighter than ever. As the Targaryen saga unfurls, we're diving deep into the heart of Westerosi politics, where loyalty is as fickle as a sellsword's sword and trust is a currency in short supply. So, saddle up your dragons, grab your goblet of Dornish red, and join us as we dissect the latest chapter in this epic tale of power, passion, and peril. Welcome! The episode kicks off with the confrontation between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. History shows that they've been at odds with each other for ages. We quickly learned that the Brackens have declared for Aegon, while the Blackwoods are in support of Rhaenyra. It was a great exchange, and for a moment I was sure that the Blackwoods would absolutely smite down the Brackens. However, the shot quickly moves to a gruesome shot of both factions having absolutely annihilated each other, but the Brackens, as we learn later in the episode, had more survivors than the Blackwoods. For a moment, I had to ask myself if Rhaenyra really has a chance of winning this war, 'cause things don't look so good for her cause. The scene moves on to Dragonstone, where Rhaenyra is burying the Cargyle twins together with honor. Jace is thoroughly disturbed by the respect Rhaenyra is showing to Eric, who had been instructed to come and take her out. Rhaenyra does mention that he was just doing his duty, and with that, this makes Jace even more restless for his mother's lack of action, so he walks off. Rhaenys joins Rhaenyra, and they begin to talk about next steps. Rhaenys counsels her that they shouldn't rush to war, but rather find some way to settle this before even more lives are lost. Rhaenyra is not sold on this idea. The fact that Alicent and her children stole her crown is reason enough for her to not want any talks of peace, at least at the moment. Back in King's Landing, Criston Cole appears to be deep in thought as he grips the back of a chair while hunched over in the Tower of the Hand. A squire lets him know that the small council is assembled. As he walks through the halls of the Red Keep, it's clear that many are not happy about his appointment as the Hand of the King. At the small council meeting, it's clear everyone is ready to go to war with the exception of Alicent and Grand Maester Orwyle. We do learn that the news of Eric's failure have reached King's Landing. Criston proposes the plan that they had come up with alongside Aemond as his own, but he sidelines Aemond, suggesting that he stays behind to guard King's Landing from the skies. This is the first time that Alicent is starting to see Criston's mask slip. He's now getting more comfortable showing everyone his arrogance that we as the audience have seen of him from when Rhaenyra rejected him. Unfortunately, I don't think this will be enough to turn Alicent off him, seeing as this is the first man that has actually showed her tenderness and pleasure. We do get a funny moment where Aegon is trying to convince everyone on his council that he's just as scary as members of Rhaenyra's faction. As the camera pans to the rest of the council, you can tell just how much none of them believe in him. It reminds me of when Tywin told Joffrey that any man who keeps harping that they are the king is no true king. At the same time in Dragonstone, we find out Mysaria did stay. She offers to serve Rhaenyra, seeing as she is more vulnerable than ever. I believe this is the birth of each camp selecting their own mistress and master of whispers, since Mysaria is Rhaenyra's as Lares is to Aegon respectively. Rhaenyra also makes the decision to send her younger children with Rhaena, first to the Eyrie, then a decision will be made on where will be safest to send Aegon the Younger and Viserys. Rhaena does feel left out since her sister Baela is joining in on the war. To be fair, at this point having a dragon is like currency. This is why both sides must master every dragon rider they can add to their cause. In spite of all that, it wasn't until Rhaenyra showed Rhaena the dragon eggs that she was to travel with that she finally understood just how important her role was going to be in ensuring the continuation of not only their family line, but also the family's power, which is dragons. From there, we get to see Daemon finally arrive in Harrenhal. Some parts of the vast castle have been long deserted, but we hear some people shout dragons when Daemon lands. The last time we saw Harrenhal was back in Season 1, when Larys had people burn down his family's home. Daemon does end up finding the lord of the castle, Sir Simon Strong, who swears fealty to Rhaenyra's cause. Sir Simon does let us know that no one within those walls holds Larys in high esteem after what he did to his family. The siege looks easy enough, but then Daemon ends up being haunted by the ghosts of his past sins. He ends up seeing young Rhaenyra, and she reminds him of all the chaos he brings and always walks away, leaving other people cleaning up his mess. Once he comes to from his hallucinations, we meet Alice Rivers, and she does tell Daemon that he will meet his end in Harrenhal. This was a cool callback to the Parent show where there was always talk of the ghosts of Harrenhal. We are not sure if Alice Rivers is a seer just like Helena, but it will be interesting to see if what she said about Daemon actually comes to pass. We also get a call back when Sir Simon mentions that there has never been a great fire since Aegon the Conqueror landed in the Riverlands. But Larys ensured the next fire ravaged everyone within those walls, including his own father and brother. And that just adds to another reason why no matter how they decide to try and redeem his character, all will never be forgotten nor forgiven. In King's Landing, Kristen is preparing to ride to war, to gather more support and armies to fight for Aegon's cause. As they're leaving, they ran into Alicent's brother, Sir Gawain Hightower, who is not impressed by the fact that he had traveled for 3 months only to arrive and find out that their father had been cast out of court, and Kristen taking his place as the Hand of the King. They do trade a few jabs and Gawain agrees to ride with the rest of the soldiers. From afar, he can tell that something is going on between his sister and Kristen, and I for one cannot wait to see who's going to be the first to suss out what's been happening between the Lord Commander and the Queen Dowager. Aegon, on the other hand, seems to be eager to join the war. We see him getting fitted with the Conqueror's battle armor, and boy does he look ridiculous. He's clearly surrounded by a bunch of yes men, and it will be interesting to see what happens to him after he's driven away all the older and wiser support that he had around him. Larys does convince him not to join the war with a few white lies about Alicent and Aemon taking over once he goes to war. He decides to stay, but rather enjoy some dalliances with his friends who are actually supposed to be his protection. They do end up in a tavern, where Ulf the White is telling a few friends, and I'd use the term friends loosely, that he's the illegitimate son of Balon the Brave. From the books, we know Ulf is going to be one of the dragon seeds that ends up fighting for Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. I'm excited to see what direction they're going to take with this character and the other dragon seeds, but sadly I'm thoroughly disappointed that they've done away with the character Nettles. Anyway, we'll see where this goes. While Ulf is bragging about his family connections, Aegon walks in and Ulf's whole demeanor changes. For one, we can say it's just self-preservation, but in my opinion, I think this was a great foreshadowing to what treachery he's going to pull once they get into the trenches of war later in the dance. From the tavern, Aegon and his friends move on to a brothel, where they find Aemond at his usual spot. Aegon goes on, making fun of Aemond, belittling him, and just talking a whole lot of mess to him. At this point, we see a switch go off in Aemond, and he turns stone cold. For me, this was the point where Aegon had bought himself a whole can of whoop-you-know-what, and I wouldn't even hold it against Aemond if he decided to betray his brother in any way, because Aegon has been Aemond's biggest bully ever since they were kids. Next, We swing back to Dragonstone where Rhaenyra is meeting with her small council. They do advise her to take up refuge somewhere safe and let the rest of them continue with her cause. However, she stops them immediately because this seems as a plan to cast her aside and let the men push their own agendas now that Prince Daemon is no longer by her side. Rhaenys does back her up skillfully, might I add, and boy do we enjoy a nice talking too. Meanwhile, while Baela is patrolling from the skies with Moondancer on their surroundings, she spots a couple of soldiers on an open field. It happens to be Gwaine Hightower and a few of his men trying to ride to the nearest tavern as they oppose to Kristen's orders of sleeping on the forest grounds. Kristen sports the dragon and orders the men to ride to the nearest forest cover. Baela, on the other hand, orders Moondancer to chase after them. This to me was the best scene of the whole episode because it was like seeing Daemon in all his glory in his daughter Baela. She does chase after them, but once they get under the forest cover, she orders Moondancer to fly back into the skies. They do fly twice or 3 times above the forest, then move on. The fear alone in Gwaine's face was a clear indication that most of the men have not really considered what a war with dragons would look like. And if that chase was not enough to put the fear of God in them, then they do have a long way to go since the war is just beginning. Baela does go back and reports to the small council that the Greens are marching. Rhaenyra is still not convinced if Baela had actually seen Kristen and his men. Baela does not hold back and lets them know that she did fly close enough to identify the men, but she did keep her word with regards to the orders that she'd been given. In that she chased after them, but she did not harm any of them. This is the first time that Rhaenyra actually looked at Baela, and she could have sworn she saw Daemon all over again. It's like a game of whack-a-mole, where you think you've gotten rid of the Daemon, but his influence really does run deep. I can't wait to see if the same defiance runs in Jace as well. Nonetheless, Rhaenyra is still not convinced that war is the answer. Earlier on, we saw her finally reading a letter from Alicent, and this pushes her to go and ask Mysaria if she can help her get into King's Landing quietly. She is to sneak into King's Landing and try to parley with Alicent while she's at prayer. This was a great callback to Season 1, when Alicent took Rhaenyra to the Sept to pray for her late mother and brother after they had passed. They do have a few exchanges, and Rhaenyra demands that Alicent tells her exactly what her father said before he passed. In truth, as much as we all hate on Alicent, the one thing I can give her is that she did not lie to Rhaenyra in that moment. She told her about Viserys's final ramblings about Aegon and the prince that was promised, and it was at this moment that Rhaenyra actually realized that her father thought he was actually talking to her when he took his final breath. She tells Alicent that the king was not talking about Aegon her son, but rather Aegon the Conqueror. Even though Alicent realizes her mistake at this point, it's unreasonable to think, with all that has happened so far, that they can negotiate any kind of peace. The episode ends with Alicent telling Rhaenyra to go ahead and leave because if they find her, they for sure will have her removed permanently, if you know what I mean. For me, it was at this point that Rhaenyra realizes there's no other way to resolve everything that has happened so far, other than going to war. And like Aegon said earlier in the episode.
Good. To war then.
And there you have it, fellow lords and ladies of the realm. Episode 3 of House of the Dragon has left us with more questions and teeth-chattering excitement and anticipation. From shocking revelations to strategic maneuverings, this episode had us on the edge of our seats, eagerly anticipating what fiery twists await us next. As the dragon fire of intrigue continues to blaze across the 7 kingdoms, one thing's for certain: House of the Dragon is heating up faster than Drogon's breath. So, until next time, may your swords stay sharp, your dragons fierce, and your wits as sharp as a Lannister's tongue. Keep riding the dragon of anticipation until next week's thrilling episode. Thank you for joining us on this captivating journey. If you enjoyed this video, Please like, comment, and/or subscribe for more delightful content, and I'll see you on the next one.